Alien princess dreads a brutal human suitor until she sees his eyes. Her palace was a marvel of crystal towers and floating walkways, but today none of it could lift the heavy weight in her heart. For weeks, the council had prepared her for an important meeting. Her suitor, a human from the distant planet Earth, was arriving. Humans were spoken of in hushed tones and cautious whispers across the galaxy. Stories painted them as reckless, brutal, and dangerous. Lysera had never met a human herself. She had only read the reports, heard the tales, and listened to the warnings. The very thought of a human suitor filled her with unease. What kind of being would willingly come to Veora, a world so different from Earth? How could she, a delicate princess of her people, face such a creature? Her personal assistant, a small hovering droid named Vint, floated quietly beside her. "Princess," Vint said in his calm, metallic voice, "your suitor's arrival is imminent. The council expects you to meet him on the Grand Terrace." Lysera exhaled slowly. "Vint, I do not wish to meet him," she confessed. "All I have heard about humans, they are wild, they are brutal." Vint's lights blinked softly, a sign he was processing her words. "Princess, rumors are not always facts. Perhaps he is different. Perhaps he will surprise you." Lysera shook her head. "Different or not, the thought of a human standing before me, it terrifies me. What if he does not understand our customs? What if he makes a mistake?" Vint's tone was gentle, though precise. "Mistakes are part of understanding." "Perhaps this meeting is the beginning of something greater than fear, Princess." Lysera remained silent, staring at the sky. Her mind wandered to the stories she had read. Tales of humans fighting wars with brute force, taking risks that no Veoran would dare. She remembered a report where a human explorer had survived an uncharted asteroid storm, using courage and intuition that defied logic. To Lysera, that was terrifying. A distant hum echoed through the palace corridors, growing steadily louder. The arrival craft was landing. The royal servants moved with quiet efficiency, preparing the grand terrace for the formal greeting. The city below seemed to hold its breath, as though even the streets sensed the weight of this moment. Lysera's heart beat faster. She adjusted her ceremonial robe, a flowing garment that shimmered with threads of crystal light. Every movement was precise, every gesture a reflection of Veoran grace. Yet inside, she felt a storm of anxiety. Finally, a soft vibration signaled the craft's landing. Guards opened the doors, revealing a human stepping onto the polished platform. He was tall, taller than most Veorans, with broad shoulders and a strong frame. His uniform was simple but sturdy, designed for travel and practicality, not for ceremony. Lysera froze. The human's presence was commanding, yet there was a calmness in his movements that made her pause. This was Captain Ethan Rains, the human who would either become her future partner or the reason her people whispered about disaster. Ethan's eyes scanned the terrace with careful curiosity. They were a deep shade of hazel, warm and clear, and they held a quiet intelligence that Lysera had not expected. His gaze lingered briefly on the palace towers, then on the Veoran citizens gathered below. Unlike the rumors, there was no sign of recklessness, no glint of violence, only attention and respect. He stepped forward, bowing in the human way, which was simple and unpretentious. Lysera's lips pressed together. The bow was not as elaborate as Veoran custom demanded, but somehow it felt honest. "Princess Lysera," Ethan said, his voice calm and steady, carrying across the terrace. "It is an honor to meet you." Lysera's heart skipped a beat. She nodded gracefully, her hands folded in front of her. "Captain Rains, welcome to Veora. We hope your journey was safe." "It was," Ethan replied, his eyes briefly meeting hers. There was a focus in his gaze, a way of looking at her that seemed to see not just the princess, but the person behind the title. Lysera felt a strange sensation, a mix of curiosity and something she could not yet name. The council approached to witness the greeting. Elder Veoran officials, with their crystal staffs and flowing robes, murmured among themselves. They had doubts, just like Lysera, but also a glimmer of hope. Humans were unpredictable, but they were also capable of extraordinary deeds. As the formal introductions ended, the council stepped back, leaving Lysera and Ethan alone on the terrace for the first time. The twin suns glinted off the crystal towers, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floor. Lysera felt the heat of the suns on her face, though it was nothing compared to the heat rising in her chest. Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Princess, I know humans have a reputation here, but I hope my actions will show you a different side of us." We are not defined by rumors or stories. We are what we choose to be. Lysera studied him carefully. The words were simple, but the tone carried sincerity. She had expected arrogance, recklessness, or perhaps even aggression. Instead, there was thoughtfulness. A human who understood the weight of this meeting. She tried to steady her voice. "We shall see, Captain. Veora values wisdom and careful judgment above all. You will have to learn our ways if you wish to gain our trust." "I am willing to learn," Ethan replied without hesitation. "And I hope to understand you, Princess, not just as a leader but as a person." Lysera's heart skipped again. That sentence, so ordinary in its meaning, felt extraordinary. No human had ever spoken to her like that before. Not with interest, not with respect. The first few days were a whirlwind of introductions, tour, and ceremonial events. Ethan walked through the crystal gardens, observing plants that shimmered with internal light, and admired the floating fountains that defied gravity. He asked questions, not just polite ones, but thoughtful questions that revealed curiosity and intelligence. Lysera watched him from a distance, initially tense and skeptical. Each time he spoke with the citizens, each time he helped someone with a minor problem, she noticed something remarkable. He listened, really listened. His eyes were attentive, patient, and kind. It was not the eyes of someone brutal or reckless, as she had feared. One evening, during a walk through the lower palace gardens, Lysera overheard Ethan assisting a group of young Veoran children. A small accident had caused one of the children to trip near the fountain, and Ethan immediately knelt to help. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, brushing the child's shimmering hair from their face. I think so," the child said timidly. Ethan's eyes, focused and reassuring, gave the child confidence. "Good, be careful near the water. These fountains are beautiful, but they can be tricky." Lysera felt a warmth in her chest. The human was not only strong, he was careful, compassionate, and observant. Something in the intensity of his gaze told her he cared deeply about more than appearances or protocol. That night, Lysera could not sleep. She thought about the human who had stepped onto her terrace just days ago, the one she had dreaded, the one who now lingered in her mind. Ethan Rains was not what she expected. He was different. The next morning, she watched him from a balcony as he spoke with the palace guards. He was giving instructions for security and coordination, but he did so with respect, acknowledging their experience and asking for their opinions. Lysera realized that this human was not only strong and brave, he was wise in ways that went beyond brute force. By the end of the first week, the council began to whisper. Perhaps the rumors were wrong. Perhaps humans, at least this one human, were capable of extraordinary understanding and empathy. Lysera, however, remained cautious. She still carried the weight of doubt and the fear of her own expectations. Humans had been described as brutal, and one could not ignore centuries of reputation. Yet every time she met Ethan's eyes, she felt a quiet reassurance, a challenge to the stories she had been told, and perhaps an invitation to see the world differently. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace, Lysera stood on the balcony, looking out over her city. For the first time, she felt a flicker of curiosity replace her dread. The human had arrived, and he had not lived up to the terrible reputation she feared. Instead, he had shown her something unexpected, something she would need to understand if she hoped to face the coming days. And so, the stage was set. Princess Lysera, wary but intrigued, and Captain Ethan Rains, the human who carried both mystery and courage in his eyes, began a journey that would challenge the fears of a people, the expectations of a galaxy, and the heart of a princess who had always believed humans were too wild to understand. In the quiet of her chamber that night, Lysera whispered to herself, perhaps he is not what they said." The twin suns had set, but a new light had begun to shine in Lysera's heart. The morning light spilled across Veora's crystalline towers, catching every surface and sending rainbows dancing across the palace gardens. Princess Lysera walked through the floating pathways, her robes shimmering with soft colors. Today was to be a day of formal introductions and ceremonial meetings. She could feel the tension in the palace, a mix of curiosity and caution. Captain Ethan Rains had been on Veora for several days now. The initial greetings and tour had passed without incident, yet Lysera still felt unsure. She had observed him closely, trying to measure his strength, his intentions, and his understanding of her world. There were moments of confidence, moments of kindness, but still he was a human. The council's warnings echoed in her mind. Humans were reckless, they said. Humans were brutal. And yet in Ethan's presence, Lysera felt a growing uncertainty about those warnings. The first official event of the day was a meeting with the council and other high-ranking Vayoran officials. They gathered in the grand hall, a vast chamber with walls that reflected light in shifting patterns, making the entire room sparkle as if it were alive. Ethan followed the attendants, moving carefully, aware of the importance of every step he took. Lysera watched him as he bowed slightly to each official, following protocol imperfectly but respectfully. Some of the elders whispered, noticing the slight differences from traditional Vayoran etiquette. "Look at him," whispered one elder to another. "He does not bow deeply enough. Does he not respect our customs?" Another responded, "Perhaps, but see how he looks at us, listens to us. He may be different, but perhaps different is not wrong." Lysera felt herself torn between relief and frustration. She wanted to trust her instincts, yet the weight of centuries of stories about humans pressed on her. She took her seat at the head of the hall, maintaining the regal composure expected of a princess. Ethan began speaking, introducing himself to the council. "I come in peace," he said, "and with respect for your traditions. I hope to understand your people and your world. I wish to learn, not to impose. I hope, Princess Lysera, that we can build trust." His voice carried a calm assurance, and his eyes met hers with genuine focus. Lysera felt her heart skip a beat. There was something about his gaze that seemed to see past appearances, past rank and ceremony, and look directly at the person he addressed. She had expected arrogance or aggression. Instead, there was understanding. The council remained cautious. They asked questions about Earth, about humans, about the so-called brutal reputation. Ethan answered honestly, acknowledging that humans could be strong and bold, but emphasizing the importance of cooperation, empathy, and intelligence. One elder frowned. "Your people are described as violent and dangerous. How can we trust you?" Ethan met the elder's gaze without hesitation. "Strength without control is dangerous, yes, but strength with understanding, with care, can protect and build. I am not here to fight or to conquer. I am here to learn and to show respect." Lysera felt a flutter of hope. Perhaps this human was different from the stories she had been told. Perhaps there was more to humans than she had feared. After the council meeting, the group moved to the palace gardens. The gardens were a marvel, with floating paths, glowing flowers, and pools of water that reflected the crystal towers above. Children played nearby, and citizens walked through the gardens, enjoying the gentle warmth of the twin suns. Ethan paused near a cluster of flowers that emitted soft light. He crouched to examine them, gently touching the petals. "These are remarkable," he said softly. "Do they bloom naturally, or are they cultivated?" Lysera watched him, her curiosity growing. He asked questions, not for show, not to impress, but out of genuine interest. That alone set him apart from the humans she had heard about in stories. Their walk continued, and soon they approached a group of young Vayoran children. A small accident occurred. A child tripped on a floating stone and fell toward the pool. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped forward. His movements were precise, careful, and calm. He caught the child before they could fall. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, looking at the child with concern. I think so," the child replied, blinking in surprise. "Good, take care near the water, all right?" Ethan said with a reassuring smile. Lysera felt her chest tighten. Here was a human, a being she had been told to fear, showing kindness, care, and attention. His eyes, so focused and warm, revealed more than words ever could. There was bravery, yes, but also compassion, something her people rarely associated with humans. As the day continued, Lysera observed Ethan interacting with the palace guards, the attendants, and even the palace animals. He treated every being with respect and patience, yet his direct manner sometimes clashed with Vayoran etiquette. A guard bowed more deeply than Ethan expected, and he instinctively straightened the guard with a light hand on the shoulder. The gesture was practical and helpful, but to the Vayorans observing, it seemed almost rude. Whispers followed them. "He does not understand our ways. He is reckless," Lysera frowned. She wanted to defend him, but she also understood the caution of her people. Vayorans valued precision, ritual, and subtlety. Humans were different. They were bold, direct, and at times unpredictable. By the afternoon, Lysera decided to speak with Ethan alone. They walked along a narrow balcony that overlooked the city. The twin suns reflected off the crystalline towers below, sending shafts of light into the sky. Captain, Lysera began carefully, I hear whispers about your behavior. My people see you as reckless. Ethan looked at her calmly. I understand, I am not of this world, I do not know all your customs, but I try to act with respect and care. Sometimes that may appear different. Lysera studied his eyes, trying to see beyond the human mannerisms and stories she had heard. There was honesty there. There was no malice, no arrogance, no cruelty, only thoughtfulness and curiosity. I do not know what to make of you, Lysera admitted. Humans are said to be brutal, strong, uncontrolled. It is difficult to trust what I do not understand. Ethan nodded. And I do not blame you. Stories and fear can be powerful, but trust is built through actions, not rumors. Let me show you who I am, not who you have been told I might be. Lysera felt a small flicker of hope. Perhaps this was not the reckless, brutal being she had imagined. Perhaps there was more to humans than the stories suggested. That evening, a minor emergency occurred in the lower gardens. A section of floating path had become unstable, and a group of citizens was trapped on a small platform above a glowing pool. The council hesitated, unsure how to respond quickly. Ethan, however, acted immediately. He instructed the guards, calculated the safest way to move the citizens, and personally guided them to safety. His eyes were sharp, focused, and calm, revealing an intuitive understanding of danger and protection. Lysera watched from above, her heart racing. She realized that the human's reputation as brutal did not fit what she was witnessing. His actions were not reckless. They were decisive, careful, and brave. His strength was paired with empathy and intelligence. As the citizens were safely guided away, Lysera felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. She had feared a brutal warrior, but instead, she had witnessed a protector. She began to see the possibilities beyond the old stories, possibilities that challenged her own understanding and the fears of her people. Later that night, in her private chamber, Lysera reflected on the day. The stories about humans seemed less certain now. Captain Ethan Rains was strong, yes, but not brutal. He was bold, but not careless. He was different, yes, but in ways that intrigued her rather than frightened her. She stared at the violet sky beyond her window, her mind filled with questions. Could humans truly be trusted? Could one human, at least, bridge the gap between worlds and fears? And most importantly, what was it about his eyes that made her heart feel something she had not felt in years? The twin suns had set, and the palace was quiet. Yet within the walls, a spark had begun to grow. A spark of curiosity, understanding, and perhaps something more. Princess Lysera, who had arrived dreading the human suitor, now found herself observing him not with fear, but with attention, wonder, and a hint of hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new trials, and new observations. But for now, she allowed herself a rare moment of calm. The human she had feared was not the monster the stories had painted. He was something else entirely. And in the quiet of the night, Lysera whispered to herself once more, Perhaps he is not as brutal as I thought. Perhaps he is something far greater. The morning mist rolled over the crystalline towers of Veora, giving the city an almost magical glow. Princess Lysera stood on the edge of the grand terrace, her robes catching the soft light, and watched as Captain Ethan Rains prepared for the first of the trials. The council had decided that if Ethan wished to continue his courtship, he must face the ancient Veoran trials, tests of strength, intelligence, and character. The trials were not designed to humiliate. They were designed to reveal the true nature of those who sought to earn the trust of the Veoran people. Many visitors had failed before, unable to meet the demands of a world so different from their own. Lysera's heart beat fast. She feared for Ethan, but also felt a growing curiosity. Could he truly succeed where others had faltered? Ethan approached the starting point of the first trial, the Path of Mirrors. This trial tested perception, patience, and focus. Endless crystal mirrors lined the pathway, reflecting images of the traveler in ways that could disorient even the most careful observer. A wrong step could lead one to stumble off the narrow path into a pit of glowing energy. The first moments were tense. Ethan paused, observing each reflection, noting how the angles could deceive him. He adjusted his pace, moving carefully but confidently. His hands brushed lightly against the mirrored edges, sensing the slight vibrations that revealed safe footing. Lysera watched from above, amazed at his precision. Some Veoran council members muttered among themselves. He is slow, one said. He does not understand the path. Lysera shook her head slightly. Patience is not weakness, she whispered. As Ethan progressed, he encountered an illusion, a false path that appeared solid but was actually empty. Many candidates before him had faltered here, panicking at the sudden emptiness. Ethan stopped, taking a deep breath, and studied the reflection patterns carefully. His eyes, sharp and focused, tracked the subtle differences in the mirror light. Step by step, he navigated safely past the illusion. When he emerged from the path of mirrors, the council let out a quiet murmur of approval. Even Lysera could not hide her admiration. Humans may have been reckless in stories, but this human was clever, calm, and focused under pressure. The second trial awaited, the trial of courage. This trial took place in the Crystal Caverns, a vast underground network filled with glowing stalactites and stalagmites. The caverns were beautiful but dangerous. Sudden shifts of crystal could trap or injure the unwary. Ethan entered the caverns with Lysera following at a safe distance. The first challenge appeared quickly. A section of the cavern collapsed, leaving a narrow ledge over a glowing chasm. Vayoran explorers often hesitated here, but Ethan did not. He measured each step carefully, moving with confidence that came from experience and instinct. Halfway through, a sudden tremor shook the caverns. Crystal shards fell and a small landslide blocked part of the path. A young Vayoran scout trapped nearby cried out. Without hesitation, Ethan ran toward the danger. His human strength and agility allowed him to lift debris and shield the scout. His eyes were determined and steady, unshaken by the threat. Princess Lysera gasped as she watched. This was the human she had feared, the one rumored to be reckless and brutal, acting not with violence but with bravery and careful precision. He was protecting life, showing strength tempered by wisdom. The council and attending spectators were visibly impressed. They had expected chaos, but what they saw was courage, skill, and empathy. Ethan's performance challenged everything they thought they knew about humans. The third trial was perhaps the most demanding, the trial of understanding. In this challenge, Ethan was placed in a simulated Vayoran village and faced scenarios requiring diplomacy, problem-solving, and moral choice. Villagers presented complex problems, disputes over resources, misunderstandings between species, and ethical dilemmas that required careful thought. Ethan approached each situation with patience. He listened to both sides, asked thoughtful questions, and sought solutions that preserved harmony and fairness. Where others might have imposed decisions through authority or strength, Ethan guided through reasoning, empathy, and fairness. Princess Lysera observed closely, noticing the way Ethan's eyes softened when listening, brightened when understanding, and narrowed thoughtfully when considering a problem. She realized that this human possessed a kind of intelligence that went beyond strength or technical skill. It was wisdom, combined with humanity. At one point, a Vayoran elder approached Ethan with a particularly difficult challenge, a disagreement between two families over a newly discovered crystal mine. The families were stubborn and proud, unwilling to compromise. Ethan spoke calmly, addressing each family individually. "I see that this crystal is important to both of you," he said. "It provides light, resources, and stability, but fighting over it will harm all of us. Perhaps there is a way to share to ensure everyone benefits." "Can we find a solution together?" The families murmured among themselves, unsure how to respond. Ethan continued, his voice steady and patient. "We must listen to each other and find a way that honors your needs and traditions. I am not here to take sides, only to help understand." After tense moments, the families began to discuss, guided by Ethan's careful questions and reasoning. By the end, they agreed on a shared plan, one that balanced their needs and respected tradition. The council nodded, impressed by the human's skill and moral judgment. Lysera felt a swell of admiration. Each trial revealed not just strength or skill, but character. Ethan was courageous, clever, empathetic, and wise. He had passed the tests not by brute force, but by understanding, patience, and care. The final trial was the most dangerous, the trial of reflection. Here, Ethan would face a challenge designed to confront his fears, doubts, and inner truths. A holographic environment replicated scenarios from his life, from moments of failure to moments of doubt, forcing him to confront himself honestly. At first, Ethan hesitated. Shadows of fear flickered in his eyes as he navigated illusions of past mistakes and hypothetical disasters. But he did not falter for long. He confronted each scenario with honesty, acknowledging fears without letting them control him. His resilience, focus, and integrity shone through, revealing a depth of character few had expected. Princess Lysera, watching from the observation deck, felt her fear of humans dissolve. This human, whom she had dreaded, was proving to be remarkable. He was not brutal, reckless, or dangerous. He was brave, intelligent, and kind. His strength was paired with care, his courage with thoughtfulness. When Ethan emerged from the trial of reflection, the council and attendants erupted in applause. Even the most skeptical elders could not deny what they had witnessed. Lysera stepped forward, her heart full of both pride and curiosity. "Captain Ethan," she said softly, "you have faced our trials with courage, wisdom, and care. You have shown qualities that no rumor could ever describe. I am beginning to see the truth of who you are." Ethan bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you, Princess. I only wish to show respect to you and your people. I hoped my actions would speak louder than stories or fears." Lysera met his eyes, and for the first time she truly understood. The warmth, focus, and honesty in his gaze told her more than any words could. This human, this earth-born explorer, was extraordinary. That evening, as the twin suns set, Lysera walked beside Ethan through the palace gardens. The air was soft, carrying the gentle hum of the city. "Captain," she said quietly, "you have changed how I see humans. I had expected chaos, recklessness, perhaps even danger. But what I have seen is far greater." Ethan glanced at her, his hazel eyes meeting hers. "I am glad, Princess. It is not my intention to change anyone's mind. I simply act as I believe is right. Perhaps that is enough to show who we truly are." Lysera smiled faintly. For the first time, she felt the dread that had accompanied Ethan's arrival begin to fade. The human she had feared was no longer a stranger, no longer a figure of stories and rumors. He was real, brave, thoughtful, and remarkably human. As the night deepened, the palace shimmered under the light of distant stars and the reflection of the twin moons. Lysera's heart felt lighter, her mind more open. The trials had revealed more than skill or courage. They had revealed character, heart, and vision. And in that quiet moment, she realized that the human she had dreaded might be the very one who could help bridge their worlds, not through power or conquest, but through courage, understanding, and the strength found in eyes that truly see. The journey of discovery was far from over, but the first step had been taken. Princess Lysera, once fearful of the human suitor, now began to wonder, could there be something extraordinary in what lay ahead? Tomorrow would bring new trials, new observations, and new chances to understand the human before her. But tonight, for the first time, she allowed herself to feel something more than fear. She allowed herself to feel hope. The morning sun rose gently over Veora, painting the city in soft gold and violet hues. Princess Lysera stood on a balcony, watching the twin suns reflect off the crystalline towers. Her thoughts were filled with Captain Ethan Rains. She had watched him through trials, ceremonies, and casual interactions, and with each passing day, her initial dread had begun to fade. The human she had feared now intrigued her. Lysera's curiosity had grown into something deeper. She wanted to know more than just how he navigated challenges or displayed courage. She wanted to understand him, to see the person behind the stories and rumors. Humans, she realized, were more complex than anyone had ever described. Ethan approached the palace garden that morning, carrying a small basket filled with plants he had collected from nearby crystal meadows. His hazel eyes met Lysera's as he approached. There was a quiet smile on his face, one that was simple but genuine. "Good morning, Princess," he said softly. "I thought I might show you some of the flora I found. Some of these might be interesting to your scholars." Lysera tilted her head, intrigued. "You take note of details others might overlook. That is unusual for humans." Ethan chuckled lightly. "Perhaps it is, or perhaps I just enjoy learning. The world is full of things worth noticing if you take the time." Lysera's gaze softened as she followed him through the floating pathways of the garden. The plants in the basket glowed softly in the morning light, reflecting the beauty of Veora itself. Yet it was not the plants that held her attention, it was the human beside her. They walked in silence for a few moments, each observing the shimmering gardens around them. Then Lysera spoke, her voice quiet but curious. "Captain, do humans always act with such determination, such care?" Ethan considered her question. "I think humans try to do what they believe is right. Some succeed, some fail. But when we care about someone or something, we try harder. That is what I try to do." Lysera studied him closely. His eyes were steady and honest, reflecting a depth of emotion she had not expected. It was not just courage she saw there, it was empathy, patience, and understanding. She felt a flutter of something unfamiliar, a warmth that grew in her chest. As they walked, Ethan shared stories of Earth. He spoke of forests and oceans, mountains and deserts, cities full of light and people from countless cultures. Lysera listened intently, fascinated by the diversity of his world. Each story painted a picture of resilience, ingenuity, and cooperation. "What you describe," Lysera said softly, "sounds alive, dangerous yet beautiful. I can see why humans are feared in some places, yet admired in others." Ethan nodded. "Fear is easy when you do not understand, but understanding, truly understanding, changes everything. I hope that one day, Veera might see humans not as a threat, but as allies." Lysera felt her respect for him deepen. His words carried sincerity, and his gaze, as always, held a quiet focus that seemed to look beyond appearances. She wondered if her own people would ever see him as she did. Later in the day, the council arranged a diplomatic dinner, bringing together leaders from various Veoran districts. Ethan moved through the gathering with ease, showing respect to the elders, listening attentively, and offering thoughtful observations. Some Veorans whispered about his unconventional manner. He did not bow as deeply as expected, nor did he follow every ceremonial rule. Yet there was something in the way he spoke, in the way he looked at each person, that commanded quiet admiration. Lysera watched him from her seat. She noticed the way he adjusted his tone for younger attendants, the way he asked elders for advice, and the way he smiled gently when children approached him. His actions spoke louder than any ceremony could. After the dinner, Lysera and Ethan found a quiet place in the palace's upper gardens. The floating lights shimmered above them, casting gentle reflections on the pools below. "Princess," Ethan said softly, "may I ask you something?" Lysera nodded, curious. "Of course." "Do you believe the stories about humans are true?" he asked. Lysera paused. She remembered the first days of his arrival, the tales of brutality and recklessness. And she thought of the trials, the careful actions, the courage, and the empathy he had displayed. I am beginning to question them," she admitted. "At first I feared you as my people have feared humans for centuries, but now I see a different truth, one that is difficult to put into words." Ethan smiled gently. "I am glad. Actions often speak louder than words or stories. I hope to continue showing you the truth if you allow me." Lysera felt a warmth in her chest. "You have already begun," she said softly. "It is not just your actions, it is your eyes. They tell more than words ever could." Ethan's gaze met hers. There was a quiet intensity in his eyes, a combination of focus, kindness, and understanding. Lysera felt a shiver run through her. In that moment, the stories of fear seemed distant, irrelevant. She saw not a human defined by rumor, but a person defined by heart, courage, and honesty. The days that followed were filled with learning, discussion, and shared moments. Ethan explored the palace, not as a guest bound by formality, but as someone genuinely curious. He asked questions about Veoran history, culture, and philosophy. He listened to Lysera's answers with patience and respect. One afternoon, a minor dispute arose among palace scholars over a translation of ancient texts. The argument became heated, with pride and tradition clashing. Ethan stepped in calmly, asking questions that clarified misunderstandings and encouraged collaboration. Within an hour, the scholars reached a solution that satisfied both sides. Lysera observed him, astonished. Humans were often painted as impulsive, but here was a human who could guide discussion with tact, clarity, and understanding. She felt admiration mixed with something deeper, an emotional connection she could not yet name. That evening they walked along a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons were rising, casting soft, silver light across the crystalline towers. Lysera spoke softly. "Captain Ethan, I have watched you for days now. You face challenges, listen with patience, and act with courage. Yet it is not just what you do, but how you do it, your care, your thoughtfulness. I have never seen such qualities in anyone outside Veora." Ethan's eyes softened. "Thank you, Princess. I do what I can. I cannot change all perceptions, nor do I wish to. I can only show respect and hope it is enough." Lysera's heart quickened. "It is more than enough. You have shown me a truth I did not know about humans and about courage. Perhaps I have been too quick to judge, too eager to rely on stories." Ethan's gaze held hers, steady and unwavering. There was an honesty that no words could capture. In those eyes, Lysera saw patience, understanding, and a kind of strength that was rare and precious. In the following days, Lysera found herself seeking Ethan's company, drawn by curiosity and admiration. They shared quiet conversations in the gardens, discussed philosophy and science in the libraries, and walked through the palace corridors under the soft light of the twin suns. With each interaction, Lysera's respect grew. The human she had once dreaded was becoming someone she could trust, admire, and perhaps even care for. She realized that courage and compassion could take many forms, and that this human embodied both in ways she had never imagined. One evening, as they watched the sun set together, Lysera finally spoke the thought she had been avoiding. "Captain Ethan, I no longer fear you. I see now that you are not what the stories said. You are more, far more than I expected." Ethan turned to her, a small, gentle smile on his face. "Princess, I am honored that you see me that way. I only hope to continue earning your trust and understanding. That is all I wish." Lysera's eyes softened. "You have already begun. It is not only your actions, but the way you see the world, and the way you see me. Your eyes, they speak truth that words cannot." Ethan's gaze met hers, steady, warm, and unwavering. For the first time, Lysera felt a sense of peace she had not known since childhood. Fear had been replaced by trust, doubt had been replaced by understanding, and curiosity had blossomed into admiration. That night, Lysera lay in her chamber, reflecting on the days that had passed. Ethan had challenged her expectations, not through force, but through character. He had shown her bravery, intelligence, empathy, and honesty. And most importantly, he had shown her that humans, at least this human, were capable of greatness beyond the stories. The twin moons shone through her window, casting silver light across the crystal floors. Lysera whispered softly to herself, "Perhaps humans are not what I feared. Perhaps there is something extraordinary in what I have seen." A new chapter was beginning, not just for her, but for Veora. And at the center of it was a human with eyes that spoke a truth no story or warning could ever capture. Princess Lysera, who had arrived dreading the human suitor, now found herself looking forward to each day, each conversation, and each quiet moment of understanding. For the first time, she began to see the possibilities of connection, trust, and something far greater than fear. The journey of understanding was far from over, but Lysera knew that the foundation had been laid. Courage, kindness, and honesty had bridged the gap between worlds. And in the glow of the twin moons, she allowed herself to imagine what might come next. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps the beginning of a bond that would change not only their lives, but the perception of humans across the galaxy. And as she drifted into sleep, Lysera smiled softly. For the first time in weeks, the future felt bright, promising, and full of hope. The morning sky over Veora glowed in soft shades of gold and violet, signaling a day unlike any other. Today was the ceremonial gathering where Princess Lysera would announce her choice. For weeks, the city had watched the human suitor with curiosity and caution. Some were skeptical, others hopeful, but all awaited the outcome. Lysera stood on the balcony of the grand hall, her robes shimmering with threads of crystal light. She looked over the assembled crowd. Council members, citizens, scholars, and attendants all gathered to witness this historic moment. Her heart beat steadily, but there was no fear now, only clarity. Captain Ethan Rains approached, his tall frame moving with the same calm confidence she had come to admire. His hazel eyes met hers, steady and warm, reflecting understanding and respect. The rumors of brutal humans seemed like distant echoes, irrelevant in the presence of this man who had proven himself through courage, intelligence, and kindness. The council elder stepped forward to begin the ceremony. "Princess Lysera," he said, "you have observed the human suitor, Captain Ethan Rains, through trials of courage, wisdom, and understanding. It is now time to declare your choice." Lysera inhaled deeply, then stepped forward. Her voice, clear and confident, echoed through the hall. "Captain Ethan Rains has faced every trial with courage, wisdom, and care. He has demonstrated qualities that cannot be described in stories or rumors. He is brave, intelligent, and kind. And he has earned not only my respect, but my trust." A murmur passed through the crowd. Some Veorans exchanged glances, unsure what to make of this human who had surpassed their expectations. Lysera continued, "Therefore, I choose Captain Ethan Rains as my suitor. Not for his strength alone, not for what the stories said of his people, but for who he is, an individual of courage, honor, and heart." Ethan bowed deeply, humbled and respectful. "Princess, I am honored by your words. I will do my utmost to continue earning your trust and respect, and to serve your people with care and understanding." The crowd erupted in applause. The skeptical murmurs faded as people witnessed the bond of respect and admiration between the princess and the human. Slowly, the citizens began to understand. The stories of brutal humans were incomplete, lacking the courage, wisdom, and empathy that this man had shown. Lysera stepped closer to Ethan, her eyes meeting his. "Your actions have shown me truths that words alone could not. And your eyes, they have told me who you are more clearly than any story ever could." Ethan's gaze held her steadily, calm and reassuring. "I am glad, Princess. It has been my goal to show respect and understanding to bridge the gap between our worlds. I hope we can continue to do so together." In the following days, the city began to change. Citizens, scholars, and leaders alike observed the humans' deeds and words, slowly letting go of old fears. Ethan's compassion, intelligence, and courage became a model for cooperation and trust. Where suspicion had existed, understanding began to grow. Lysera and Ethan spent time together, walking through the gardens, discussing the future of Veora, and planning initiatives to strengthen ties between their worlds. Each interaction deepened their connection. Lysera discovered that courage was not only in facing danger, but in acting with care and honesty. She realized that understanding others required patience and open-mindedness, qualities Ethan displayed effortlessly. One afternoon, while walking along a terrace overlooking the city, Ethan pointed to the twin suns reflecting off the crystalline towers. "Princess, I have seen beauty in this world that I could never have imagined. But the greatest beauty is not in the city or the crystals, it is in the people, and especially in you." Lysera felt warmth fill her chest. She had feared humans, feared the unknown, but Ethan had shown her that courage and kindness could be found even in those once deemed dangerous. "Captain," she said softly, "you have changed not only my view of humans, but the way I see the world, and the way I see myself." As weeks passed, Lysera and Ethan worked together to plan exchanges between Veora and Earth, fostering understanding between their peoples. Ethan shared stories of human cooperation, ingenuity, and empathy, while Lysera introduced him to Veoran culture, wisdom, and traditions. The more they shared, the more both learned to see the world through new eyes. One evening, as they stood on a balcony under the twin moons, Lysera reflected on how far they had come. "Captain Ethan," she said, "I admit I was afraid at first. I thought humans were reckless and brutal, but you have shown me the truth. Courage and strength are not only about power, they are about heart, understanding, and respect." Ethan's eyes softened. "Princess, fear is natural when facing the unknown. But courage is choosing to face it anyway, and I have been fortunate to learn from you as well. Your wisdom, patience, and openness have taught me as much as I have shown you." Lysera smiled, realizing that their bond was more than respect or admiration. It was mutual growth, trust, and understanding. The human she had once dreaded had become a partner in thought, action, and heart. The city celebrated the announcement of their bond with ceremonies that combined Veoran tradition and human simplicity. There were music, light displays, and speeches that spoke of unity, courage, and hope. For the first time in generations, Veorans looked at humans with admiration rather than fear, inspired by the deeds of one remarkable man. In a quiet moment after the festivities, Lysera and Ethan walked together in the palace gardens. The glowing flowers reflected the soft light of the twin moons, creating a magical atmosphere. "Princess," Ethan said quietly, "I never imagined I would find a world like this or a person like you. You have shown me that trust, understanding, and courage can bridge any gap." Lysera's eyes met his. "And you have shown me that true strength lies not in fear or force, but in action guided by heart and wisdom. I am grateful for your presence, your courage, and your honesty." Ethan reached out, taking her hand gently. "Then together we can build something greater than fear or rumor. We can show our worlds that understanding, trust, and compassion are stronger than stories of dread." Lysera squeezed his hand, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. The human she had feared had become a partner, a friend, and a guide. His eyes, always honest and steady, had shown her a truth no rumor could ever capture. In the weeks that followed, Veora and Earth began exchanges of knowledge, culture, and ideas. Citizens learned from each other, scientists shared discoveries, and leaders collaborated to ensure peace and progress. The human suitor, once feared as brutal, became a symbol of courage, wisdom, and empathy, a bridge between worlds. Lysera and Ethan continued to grow closer, their bond strengthened by shared experiences, challenges, and understanding. They walked the palace gardens, explored the crystal towers, and planned for the future together. Each day brought new lessons, new discoveries, and deeper trust. One night, standing under the twin moons, Lysera whispered, "Captain Ethan, I no longer fear humans. I have seen what one can truly be. You have shown me courage, wisdom, and heart. And in your eyes, I have seen a truth no story could ever tell." Ethan smiled softly, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Princess, and in your eyes, I see trust, understanding, and hope. Together, we can build a future where fear is replaced by knowledge and doubt by courage." As the moons cast silver light across the city, Lysera realized that the journey of fear, curiosity, and admiration had reached a turning point. She had faced the unknown and discovered a truth greater than any rumor, that courage, kindness, and understanding could bridge worlds, transform hearts, and inspire generations. The twin suns rose again, bringing a new day to Veora. And in the light of those suns, Princess Lysera and Captain Ethan Rains walked side by side, ready to face the future together. Not as strangers, not as figures defined by stories, but as partners, friends, and pioneers of hope. And so, the human who had been feared as brutal became a hero not through conquest or force, but through courage, empathy, and the quiet strength of his eyes. The princess who had dreaded him discovered that bravery and heart could be found in the most unexpected places. Together, they looked to the horizon, ready to embrace a future filled with trust, unity, and the promise of understanding. For the first time, the galaxy watched not a story of fear, but a story of hope, one in which humans and Veorans could walk together, eyes open, hearts aligned, and worlds united. And in that moment, Princess Lysera whispered to herself, it was never the stories that mattered, it was always the truth in his eyes. The twin suns rose higher, shining on a city filled with possibility, and on a princess and a human who had discovered that courage, kindness, and understanding could truly change everything.